Welcome to another edition of Boom and Bust. I'm your host, Tony Clement. I'm here at the News Forum, where all voices matter. Well, a lot has happened to the small business ecosystem over the past few months. So what better time to check in with regular guest Dan Kelly? He is the head of the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. As COVID recedes and a federal election possibly in the cards, there's lots to talk about. Welcome back, Dan.
Happy to be with you, Tony.
So obvious question, can you describe the state of small businesses across this country as COVID recedes?
Yeah, look, we are at kind of the very beginnings of the recovery, what one hopes the permanent recovery of Canada's business community. It has been just a massive bloodbath for small business owners in so many parts of the economy: retail, hospitality, the service sector, arts and entertainment. These businesses have been just eviscerated over the last number of months, especially in provinces that have been lockdown happy like Ontario. So it is good news that very soon, all parts of Canada, including Ontario, will finally have the majority of their business communities at least open and allowed to serve customers. Ontario is the last province in Canada, in fact, the jurisdiction with the longest lockdowns in the world. They are coming to an end for many, not all, and that's happening very, very soon. So that's great news. At this moment, about 2/3 of small and medium-sized firms across Canada are fully open, with about 1/3 that are either fully closed or partially closed. What's more worrisome, though, Tony, is that very few, only about 1/3 of businesses right across Canada are at normal levels of business income, meaning that 2/3 of Canada's small and medium-sized businesses are below or way below their normal levels of sales, and that's putting many of them in jeopardy of permanent closure.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. You've been on the program before and talked about 160,000 businesses that could be vaporized, or even double that if the lockdowns were perpetuated. Just a stroll through small town Ontario in Muskoka, and I can tell you there's a lot of storefronts that look pretty quiet to me, like that there's not a lot of activity that's gone on and may not go on when the openings are in full measure. So do you have a sense of that at all from your perspective?
Yeah, look, deep worry about how quickly these businesses will be able to attract back their customers. Look, I mean, hair salons in parts of Ontario have been closed for close to 300 days. And it's not like I'm going to go and get a haircut twice as often. Well, for starters, I don't need to. But beyond that, people aren't going to go and consume double the amount of these kinds of services. Right. There are those that are predicting that there's going to be this big flood of consumer spending that's going to happen, and there's going to be this sort of post-war type boom among businesses that have been shut down for so long. I'm not sure. I think that that's quite unlikely. Yes, that money might find its way back into the economy, but is it going to go back to the same places it left? Are people going to be flocking back to the independent retailers, to the local restaurant? Are they going to dine out twice as often now that they're able to do that inside a restaurant? I'm not sure any of those things are going to happen. And especially given that there are ongoing capacity restrictions in many provinces that mean that a business is only able to serve, in many cases, up to half of its previous customer volume. So none of this says to me that we're going to have these roaring 20s kind of benefits to small businesses. In fact, quite the opposite. I really do worry that we haven't seen anywhere close to the permanent economic damage yet. That's likely to happen in the fall. I'll paint you a picture. A business that reopens, it's been closed for the better part of, let's say an indoor dining restaurant that's been closed for 400 days in the Toronto area. They reopen. They're going to have an awesome July, an awesome August and September to try to pay back some of the debt that they have taken on during the COVID emergency. And I'm worried that that's just not likely to happen.
Yeah, no, you raise a couple of good points, and certainly I've noticed that certain demographic segments, shall we say, of the population are still pretty reticent to go to a movie theater or to do in dining at restaurants. and yet there's another segment that are, as evidenced already, are out there and doing what they can to make sure that alcohol consumption is back to normal proportions. We'll come back, in all seriousness, we'll come back with Dan Kelly after the break. Still lots of topics to discuss. Stay with us. Welcome back to Boom and Bust. I'm your host, Tony Clement, here with Dan Kelly. He is head of the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, talking about the state of small businesses across the land. Dan, I'd love to get your perspective, obviously, on behalf of CFIB. Now that things are receding a little bit and, as you say, things are opening up, what have governments done right? What have they done wrong? What's your assessment of the reopening so far?
We're actually asking our members that very question right now about how they evaluate their provincial and federal governments in terms of their economic response, their help during the COVID emergency. The data that I just glanced at this morning shows a real mixed bag, certainly of the views of their provincial governments. Governments like Saskatchewan, a ton of businesses are complimenting the province's handling of COVID in balance, and I will say in British Columbia with an NDP government, complementing their government's handling of balancing the needs of both the healthcare system and the economy. BC, for example, tried to keep its economy as open as possible through the entire pandemic. Retail in BC not closed for a single day right from March of 2020. Meanwhile, in Ontario, lockdowns were used almost indiscriminately. I viewed it as an approach that was locking away businesses, and for many, they felt like the key had been thrown away. So as you can imagine, the scorn, the anger at the Ford government here in Ontario, where I sit, is super high. I have to say, Doug Ford is perceived the same way that Bill Morneau was perceived in 2017 when he introduced the biggest set of tax changes to punish small business owners. There's a hatred of Doug Ford among many, many small business owners right now that really surprised me,
right.
given where we started from at the beginning of this pandemic. At the federal level, a mixed bag. I will say that the response got better. More economic support programs were created. They started listening to us and making some changes, and small business owners appreciated that. The last couple of months, though, the feds have viewed this as kind of their economic help is over, and they've started already to ratchet down the wage subsidy, the rent subsidy. They closed the CEBA loan program. So a lot more business owners are saying the feds are not doing what they need to help finish this this endless COVID lockdown and COVID experience that many small businesses have been facing for 15, 16 months.
Yeah, no, obviously this is something that will continue in terms of people determining whether something is going well or not going well, certainly. And as we live through this together, I have no doubt that more opinions will be formed or changed. So tell us a little bit about your advocacy at the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. What are you still focusing on end of lockdown, or what's the next level for you and your organization?
Yeah. Lots of stuff that really is quite current, and with things shifting fast, we're moving our approaches quickly as well. Now that all provinces, including Ontario, thank goodness, have moved to a reopening strategy, and that seems to be going reasonably well across the country, picking up pace in many jurisdictions, we are turning our attention to a stay open strategy.
Okay.
And you saw a little bit of this in Quebec. I'm not sure that they're getting the right measure. They're suggesting that rather than a blanket lockdown in the fall, if COVID numbers tick up, they're going to require businesses to ask for a vaccine credential in order to serve somebody at a retail shop or a restaurant. That we're quite worried about because I'm not sure that the business is in any shape to be able to enforce those kinds of rules. But the idea that the Quebec government has started of thinking ahead, what do we need to do to keep these businesses open, is good news, and we're complimenting them for that. Secondly, we do need some ongoing supports. We're asking the feds to push pause on the ratcheting down of the subsidies. I just spoke to a group of tourism operators today who are saying, look, they're booking stuff now for 2022 and they're happy to do it. but their income is not going to happen until 2022. They need staff right now to serve these customers to get them to be able to do this, but they're not. With the wage subsidy starting to fall off a cliff here, they're really, really in tough straits. On top of that, there's a bill that Parliament just passed, a big compliment to the federal Conservatives. They put forward, Larry Maguire, a Tory MP from Manitoba, put forward a private member's bill, Bill C-208, that equalized the tax treatment of for small business owners if they sell to their kids versus sell to a stranger. The feds have put the brakes on that, and we're pushing them hard. The shortage of labor, Tony, another giant file.
Yeah.
We're expecting that to become the dominant issue in the weeks ahead for small business owners.
We're going to take a short break. And we're back here at Boom and Bust. I'm your host, Tony Clement, and I'm here with Dan Kelly. He is the head of the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. Dan, we were just talking about some of the issues that you're advocating on. There is rumor, nothing confirmed, obviously, but the ones who jibber jabber in Ottawa are gibbering and jabbering. Might be a federal election in the offing, maybe as early as starting in mid-August for September 20th election date is what I'm hearing as a possibility. So again, what is the role of the CFIB in that sort of situation, and how do you see your role sort of plugging into the policy commitments of the various political parties?
Well, look, just confirming your gut instincts, I've met with the policy and platform committees of two political parties. So they're obviously asking questions. And that's step one, is trying to get some of our ideas into the platforms of the various campaigns as they go forward. We make the same offer to all political parties and do that regularly. But obviously, we'll be trying to influence not how our members vote, not how small business owners vote, but influencing politicians and political parties to ensure that they include small business friendly initiatives in their platforms and avoid some of the big worries that many are on the minds of many small business owners. So pandemic support and finishing this, getting us through this awful period, that's obviously very high on the list. Getting back to something that you helped us on an awful lot, regulatory reform, getting back to that file, Tony, is super important. You did an awesome job as minister, and we need some attention to lowering the red tape burden once again in Canada. That's always on our list of priorities. The shortage of labor that I talked about is an issue. It was an issue pre-pandemic,
right?
And went away for a period of time as there were mass layoffs. But it's back, and it's going to be back in a big way, especially as we unwind some of the federal support programs that are oriented at people, like the new CRB stream under EI. It's the successor of the CERB program. It has been providing more in benefits than people were making while working in part-time jobs.
Yeah, I've heard this anecdotally. Yeah, I've heard this anecdotally. So you're hearing from small businesses saying, look, can't hire anybody, they'd be taking a cut from the CERB. Is that what you're hearing?
You got it. Look, when I was 15, I worked in Winnipeg washing dishes at a pizza place. My parents allowed me to work one 3-hour shift a week on a Friday night. So my checks at that time were $10. But advancing that, so let's say that kid now, that 3-hour shift worker, is making $45 a week.
Yeah.
Well, he could make $45 a week while working, washing dishes for one 3-hour shift, or he will actually qualify for currently $300 a week under the CRD stream. That used to be $500 a week. The feds have actually lowered it over the course of the summer, but still, for part-time workers, if you make it the same, if your wages are the same or better while sitting on a government assistance program than while working, that's not going to help. So we're pushing right now not to take away benefits from the truly unemployed,
right,
but to ensure that at the very least, those benefits are not replacing more than 100% of somebody's pre-COVID income.
Yeah, and of course, this is having impact throughout a lot of the economy, not just the example that you cited. And it goes to the issue that this is this fiscally sustainable. So I guess there's two issues. Is it helping or hurting small business hire people for legit jobs? And secondly, the fiscal sustainability of this in the country, no?
You got it. And look, nobody more than me wants to get rid of all of the subsidy programs, including the subsidies for business. We want to replace subsidies with sales. But our point is, until such time as governments are allowing every business to reopen fully without restriction, and secondly, when borders are open, when government agencies like health officials are saying it's time to go back to the office, time to go to movies, time to go to the theater, travel, including internationally without restriction, when all of those things happen, then let's start to ratchet down the subsidies that are oriented to businesses. Before that, gosh, we're going to see some greater business casualties, long-term contraction among the small business community, who are huge taxpayers, as you know.
So we got about 30 seconds before the break. So, but you are advocating for that recognition of that issue for the federal election?
Absolutely. We're trying to get some improvements to the pandemic support, debt relief for small business owners on the docket of the political parties right now.
Right. We are going to continue our discussion with Dan Kelly. He is, of course, is the head of the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. Lots of issues to still discuss. Please stay with us. And welcome back to Boom and Bust. I'm your host, Tony Clement, here with Dan Kelly, Canadian Federation of Independent Business Chief. Dan, just to close off this topic of where we are in COVID, do you have numbers of how many businesses Canada has lost in this period of time?
So there's a bit of data out there. 60,000 businesses in 2020 closed their doors for good. Those are additional businesses beyond the normal level of grind that happens in the small business community. And we at CFIB are estimating that a further 180,000 businesses will permanently close before the end of the pandemic. And gosh, I mean, this has gone on way longer than anyone forecast. We're actually out with a new survey to try to update that data right now. I'm hoping that our data is wrong, but many businesses are telling us that they're not sure that they're going to outrun their debt for much longer. And the average small firm, Tony, is inherited $163,000 in new, fresh COVID-related debt. That's money that they've got to pay back at some point. Some of it is money they owe to the landlords, to suppliers. Business owners are really, really worried about their long-term prospects in tons of sectors of the economy.
I'm going to switch gears for the remaining part of this segment and talk about ESG, environment, social governance, which of course has become quite the topic in bigger businesses, I'd say corporate Canada, if you want to use that term. And I'm sure I'd love to get your sense of how that is trickling down to independent businesses, small businesses, because that also is a burden. Now, it's what your customers may be demanding too. So you're caught in this vice grip where it is a cost to you, but there could be a huge penalty in terms of allegiance of customers if you did not have published and measurable ESG goals. Would you care to comment on that?
Yeah, I think it's somewhat easier for small firms to try to address those things quickly than say large corporate ships that may have more of a built-in bureaucracy. Hiring practices can be changed fairly quickly by the business owner, him or herself. When we've surveyed our members about environmental goals, they are very, very committed to try to do things, practical, common sense things to try to reduce their carbon footprint, to try to ensure that they are good environmental citizens. The only part where that's, and of course, small businesses need to make sure that they keep up or at least, or try to stay ahead of where their customers are at and what they want in their ability to serve them. Where it starts to break down, though, is when governments actually impose these kinds of things or require that as part of participation in a program. I mean, we've seen this in a few sectors where the government really wants to take a very active role in running of the business in order for them to apply for some of the subsidy programs, like for the big business ones, and virtually nobody applied to use those programs as a result.
Right.
Manitoba, for example, is trying to achieve a vaccine goal. If you want to apply for a subsidy for hiring, you're going to have to ensure that it's only going for vaccinated employees. So the hands of government in terms of steering the wheel in businesses is something that we should all be a bit worried about. The goals, the directions that many set out through these policies are laudable ones. But as always, it can break down very quickly when governments try to fix the problem themselves.
Yes, so you'd rather that your members, small businesses, heed the signals from the marketplace on this rather than having these overarching governmental goals in this area?
100%. Look, consumers are often ahead of all of us on this front, and they tell the businesses what they want, and then it's up to a business to determine whether they wish to play ball or not. But many of them will suffer if they don't respond to what the consumer is demanding. So all of us have to be more conscious of this as we go forward. It's the big question for me is, does this become a mandate on the part of federal or provincial government, or is this something that consumers and businesses sort out themselves?
Dan Kelly, our time is up, but I want to thank you again for being a regular guest on this program. Always very interesting. Please join us again.
Anytime.
Thank you. So lots to digest there from Dan Kelly, head of the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, about how small businesses are emerging from COVID and from the lockdowns, but some of the challenges they still face to make sure that they can continue, not just thrive, but survive with the bottom line, something we'll continue to watch. But thanks for joining us here today.